Okay, I've got the CV8125 directly connected to my PC here, called local linking. I've used the cloud network discovery tool to find the CV8125 on this PC. The network discovery tool is a free to use downloadable file from our website. You can find that at cloud.co.uk resources, or in fact any product that has an Ethernet port will have the network discovery tool executable there to download. I've just saved this to my laptop desktop here and just fired it up, and as you can see it has found the CV8125 straight away. When I double click on that, I open up the web browser. Okay, the Discovery Tool browser has opened up in my PC browser here, and to log on, the log on is 1234. That's the default for all of our Ethernet product, and it's opened it up into the default setting because ex-factory we set all the amplifiers up as a mono plus mono configuration. So basically they're all good to go out of the box. And here we're showing channel 1 is in a mono setting, and there are the first pages of the DSP configuration. What I need to show you straight away is that in the config drop down on the right hand side you will see DSP configuration. This is important because you'll see from DSP configuration that the DSP blocks have all been allocated, and in this case they've actually been allocated as channels 1, 2 are mono mono, channels 3, 4 are mono mono, 5, 6 mono mono. In fact, in this case it's set to channel 7, 8 as a two-way mono crossover. Out of the factory these will all be mono set. You'll also see that there is channels 9 and 10, which for an 8-channel amplifier is a little odd. That's because we have this auxiliary facility. Auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2 can also be configured through the DSP setup, but I'll come to that shortly. We can close all these down, or in fact return them back to the configuration depository. Now I've removed all the DSP blocks from this amplifier. As you can see, it says 0 of 5. Now we will get no audio whatsoever if this was saved, because all the DSP devices have been put back and taken away from the amplifier's audio path. In fact, I'm going to do now is make channels 1, 2 mono mono, channels 3, 4 mono mono, 5 and 6 mono mono, and I'm going to put that two-way mono crossover in for channels 7 and 8. And I'm just going to save that, and we have to reboot, and there we go. Again, it defaults the home page to channel 1, and in this case it's a mono available configuration. You'll see that the screen layout has been optimized for mobile phone. We feel that that's going to be the most popular and most common user interface. So that's why it's all a little squeezed to one side. If we now go back to the right hand side configuration and click on the audio section, you'll see all the channels have been allocated via that DSP allocation process, and channel 7, 8 is the one that's different because it's now a two-way mono crossover. The fact is, because it's a two-way mono crossover, we now have a high frequency and low frequency configuration option, which you will not see on the mono channels. What I'll do is I'll go through what we've got here and how they can be set up. Input routing is where we start, and as you see here we have it set as rear panel is in the yes position, meaning that the rear panel is in control. We're just going to turn that off, meaning we can now select what we want the input routing to be for channels 7, 8. In this case, we're using line input 7. We might want to be sourcing from line input 1. We can mono sum here. You'll also see there's a grayed out section saying line input or input type. The reason that's grayed out is because there's no digital option card installed. There was a Dante card, for instance, installed. That would be an option as a source input. Moving on to the next one, we can close this down if we want. Move on to Room EQ. This is currently not enabled, now it is. And there is a simple bass treble control here, or in advanced mode, we have a 7-band parametric EQ with some shelving options on bands 1 and 7. And we can turn those on with a Q path 2. So the 7-band parametric EQ for Room EQ, and in crossover currently it's off, and in the on position we have some default slopes, and there's an overlap capability too. Because this is the crossover version, here we have for channel 7 we have the high pass option currently set to rear panel. That's the on and off function, and in on we have some cut, high pass filter cut, and some trimming options. There's a polarity option, and there is also EQ enabled for any default manufacturer settings of various brands, and they would be selectable from this point here. And in the low frequency there is of course the same, just for the low frequency range. Moving on the output, we have rear panel is currently set to on. So by taking over the rear panel setting, we can set the level control from the configurable software as against the simple remote control volume pot on the back of the amplifier. There's a mute capability, and we can also select the particular voltage we want to use for that channel. In this case, it's set to rear panel because there's a rear panel setting for that, or we can switch 100 volt, 70 volt from the DSP. Finally, at the bottom here, we have the limiter. Let's just squeeze that down. We have enabled on and off. Limiter is always set to enable out of the box. We'd like to ensure that the installer is setting some sort of limiter threshold, and that's adjustable in dB settings from there. Okay, let's put all those away. All those same configurations are available for each individual channel. As an example, if I go to channel 1, which we remember we configured as a mono channel, we have the input routing, all the other functions. The only bit that's missing, of course, is the crossover. So that's how you can tweak each of the channels through the audio section. You'll also see auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2. There is also some configuration settings for the auxiliary status as well, where you can choose what you want to slave to the auxiliary outputs. And again, you've got quite extensive control for what is an auxiliary feed from one of the inputs. If we move on to monitoring, monitoring is really designed as an easy snapshot of the amplifier for technical support purposes. We have a visual indication of what the front panel is saying. In this case, it's purely showing a temperature indication because there is no audio present on this amplifier, so there's nothing else illuminated, but that's where you would see that in real time. And also we have a snapshot indication here of how the rear panel has been set up. So it's a visualization for technical support that helps try and potentially fault find any issues that may occur in the field. And we also have a temperature indicator at the bottom here, which again helps with first line technical support when and if that becomes necessary. Back we go, and there's an event log, and the event log is a rolling log showing functions of the amplifier as they occur, and this is a scrolling log, and this will keep refreshing itself up to 256 entries, and then it will drop off and roll on from that point. You can clear the log down, and if we now jump to the config, this is in fact taking us to this same config port here. And in the config side, we have the network configuration settings. Most of this is pretty normal fare. But at the bottom, we have an SNMP setup, enabling SNMP to be functioning or otherwise. All CV amplifiers have SNMP capability, and the file logs for setting up the SNMP on a network management system are available from the website in the download section. Clock and calendar. There is a scheduler built into the clock and calendar. This is for the optional monitor card, which is for impedance load monitoring for 100 volt line channels, and you can set up a schedule of testing for the load monitor, impedance load monitor option card. General is RS-232 setup, and GPIO. There are 3 ports which can be configured as inputs or outputs. You can mute all, fault output report and user input, and there's a user output capability. We've intentionally left these pending further development. We'll wait for feedback from the market as to what other functionality should be added to GPIO capability. There is a logging function which enables the SNMP log function, whether it's sending it to SNMP or some other logging capability, but they are the logging options that are available to be forced out through GPIO or SNMP. Labeling, obviously there's a lot of inputs, a lot of outputs. This is where all the text and labeling can be set. And there is a delay capability. There is 1.482 milliseconds of delay available across the entire amplifier. So here we're showing the available delay. There's currently 0 of 1482 milliseconds used. So if I wish to use 500 milliseconds in channel 1, it will use 500 of the 1482. And if I want to use 400 on channel 2, I've now used 900 of the 1482, so on and so forth. Importantly, you can import and export the settings. So the configuration setting of this particular amplifier I can export, and then I can re-import it into another machine, or of course save it to the installer's files and records. You can change the installer pin code, and at the bottom here we have the device info showing us the build information and the version. So that covers all the configuration options of the CV series of amplifiers.